Good afternoon and welcome to the Decorah Community Prairie. My name is Larry Reese. I'm the naturalist for the Winneshiek County Conservation Board, and I've been enjoying prairies probably my whole life. So I grew up right near Hayden Prairie over in Howard County. But we're here today to talk kind of about some of the beautiful plants that you can find out on prairies in the summertime. And I think we'll get started here as we kind of walk up the way enjoying the colors. We've got one of my favorite prairie plants over here with the kind of almost look like little purple plumes poking out. This is wild bergamot that we're looking at right here. Some people would call it bee balm because the bees just love it. It also goes by the name of horse mint because it is in the mint family. And oh, here's a Japanese beetle. We not necessarily want to see him on there, but if you don't know what a Japanese beetle is, now you know. Right there. Not a favorite for a lot of people. They like to eat just about anything that they can. They're not fussy. I guess this one likes a taste of mint. But if I had to pick one of my top 5 flowers for planting in a little native planting of flowers in your garden, here's a little bumblebee right here. I think that's the common eastern bumblebee. Pollinators love the taste of mint nectar. So wild bergamot, and it doesn't grow. It doesn't get really tall and kind of unsightly. So it's just a wonderful plant to have in your wildflower garden in a fairly long blooming season. They might bloom for 3 weeks, starting about mid-July into early August. So the wild bergamot right there. Oh, and by the way, you can pick those leaves yourself and brew them up into a kind of a tasty mint tea. So that, oh boy, look at yeah, you can't even chase the bumblebees away. They really love them right there. They've got a nice long tongue that can kind of reach down into those long tubes, so they can get the nectar that other pollinators aren't able to access. Here in Iowa, we've got about a dozen different kinds of milkweed. We're probably all familiar with the common milkweed over here that's got the big fat leaves. The flowers, unfortunately, are kind of done blooming now. A little worse for wear. But they had nice kind of pale pink blossoms almost look like fireworks going off, an exploding firework. And they bloom right about the 4th of July right there. But they're done blooming now. But the butterfly milkweed here is blooming. These have the bright orange flowers. Notice the very skinny little leaves. All of the milkweed plants are excellent food source for the monarch butterfly caterpillars. Milkweed, of course, is the only thing that the monarch caterpillars can eat, so they can't eat the leaves of wild bergamot or the other plants that we've talked about here. But the butterfly milkweed there is very attractive, probably the #1 milkweed plant that's planted by people in their yards just because it looks so pretty and it doesn't spread. The problem, if there's one problem with common milkweed, it will spread out from runners sometimes and maybe kind of move into parts of your yard that you don't want it, but you can never have too much milkweed. Of course, milkweeds get their name from the fact that their stems have a white juice in them that does look like milk. I wouldn't advise drinking it though. It's not going to kill you, but it would be very bitter. In fact, the milkweed, a lot of parts of it are edible. So you can eat the flower buds before they start to bloom. The little pods, when they're still small, you can boil them up and eat them just like peas, edible peas in a pod. And when they first come out of the ground in the springtime, you can get the sprigs and eat them like asparagus. So even though, we hear that, the monarch butterfly is poisonous, that's kind of, but if you've got a little sore, you can kind of put some of this juice on over it like that and make a little Band-Aid, because this is going to dry, clear, and form a latex bandage. I put one on. This is one that I put on earlier right there, and you can kind of see it sealed up, the area of the skin right there. And then when when you don't want it on there, you can just peel it right off. But that's the latex bandage on a milkweed. Pretty cool. So as we move over here, probably if there's one prairie flower that's iconic on the prairie, it would be the compass plant that we're looking at right here. In midsummer, this is going to be the tallest flower that you're going to find out on the prairie. The flowers look like a sunflower, but they're a silphium is the genus right here. But again, kind of a rough, hairy stem that they have. The leaves are very rough as well. They're textured, they're just as tough as leather. You're not gonna, you're not gonna break those leaves at all. It's called compass plant because these leaf tips point north and south. And so if you were out here, one of the early explorers on the prairie, and there were no trees around because it was a sea of grass, you just looked at the compass plant and you kept the tips kind of, you kept running into, you would walk into the faces because that knew you were still going west because the tips were pointing north and south. A couple other names the settlers had for the compass plant are pilot weed and polar plant. Again, all things associated kind of with stars and navigation right there. So the neat thing too about the compass plant flower, or the compass plant, it protects itself if it's bruised or injured by oozing out some sap. So if you come out here, this is what the prehistoric kids did if they wanted like chewing gum. They'd break off the flower right there along the stem. Over the next 24 hours or so, that plant is going to ooze out a big ball of sap that kind of, again, covers over the wound. You come back the next day, pick off that sap, stick it in your mouth, and start chewing it, and your jaws will wear out before that gum breaks down. The problem, I've tried it just plain, it tastes like turpentine or like pine sap. So that's not such a good flavor. But back in the day, they had thousands of years to come up with, you might say, a solution, and they found it right over here with mountain mint. That's this little white flower right here. This is a plant that is often blooming right next to compass plant out on the prairie. So if you take some of these leaves, which by the way, if you pick some of those leaves, there's the leaves of the mountain mint, crush them up. They smell just like mint. You can make a mint tea out of it, but if you take those leaves, or maybe even the flowers would be better, take the flowers and start chewing them, now they've got a minty flavor, and added with that compass plant sap, soon you've got Wrigley's spearmint gum. So that, it kind of reinvented the wheel when the Wrigley brothers made the Wrigley's spearmint gum. Look at the pollinators on these mountain mint flowers. It's kind of shady now, and pollinators like sun. We were here earlier and there was literally 100 or more wasps, bees, flowers, butterflies getting that mint nectar again from the mountain mint plant. So, I talked about wild bergamot as being one of my top 5 favorite native flowers for your backyard. The mountain mint would be on the list with the wild bergamot because it's such super pollinator habitat, low growing, doesn't cause a problem. Again, just a delightful plant. And again, you can get tea from it, which is pretty tasty. So there. Over here, we've got stiff coreopsis. This is another little yellow flower right here. If you look at the leaf on the stiff coreopsis, it's very stiff, and it's got 3 little prongs on it. And the flowers, as they kind of get old, they turn kind of waxy yellow at the top right there. But the little stiff coreopsis. And in amongst them, we've got a wild onion in bloom. So yeah, there are onions on the prairie, believe it or not, right there. And the flowers are very pretty right there. If you dig down below the ground, a little kind of a white onion that would be edible. A little smaller than the ones you buy in the store or have in your garden, but they taste just as good. Let's see. Well, this is maybe I have like 2 favorite prairie grasses that I really like. One is a little blue stem. The other one is the northern dropseed that we're looking at right here. Look, notice that beautiful kind of flowing fountain form that this grass has. And we're in a kind of a cultured situation right here, but even out on the prairie in the wild, it grows with that same classic form right there. So you just can't beat that for looks. You know, if you're planting a prairie, the problem with the northern dropseed is that it likes wet prairies better than dry habitats. So if you've got a dry upland site, you're probably better off going with a little blue stem and maybe not even adding this in there. But on a kind of a wetter site, this northern dropseed is fantastic. And it's called northern dropseed. It's just going to start to flower right now, but you very seldom see the seeds, because as soon as the seeds form, they fall down. They drop off. So that's why it's called the northern dropseed. You have to kind of collect them. And so this is another plant. The seeds, when they come, if you can find them, and you pick them and you crush them, they smell just like the same kind of aroma that you get from that buttered popcorn in the movie theater. Mm-hmm. I mean, so again, the prehistoric people would pick those seeds, as small, as kind of difficult as it is, and they'd grind them up when they made their bread flour and stuff. So again, just a rich, buttery flavor that you'd get from your bread. But northern dropseed, some more of the Canada wild rye. So this little plant, actually it's fairly big, at least out on the prairie, that looks like little white church steeples. I guess maybe we're in New England, like Vermont or somewhere here, where they go in New England or in the fall to enjoy the maple color and see those little white churches there. But this is called Culver's Root, and you can kind of see it right there. This is again a favorite plant for pollinators, particularly bumblebees. And if I want to see what bumblebees are around, I'm going to go and check out the Culver's Root on the prairie right there. The bumblebees will usually just kind of make circles around it. Coming over here, we've got some really pretty purple flowers. These are blazing stars. And there's several different kinds of blazing stars that grow on prairies here in Iowa. This one here is one of the first to start blooming. This is the prairie blazing star. Liatris is the genus name. So these blazing stars are very popular in the garden trade. You go to a garden store, you can buy Liatris to plant in your yard. And again, I would highly recommend Liatris for your yard. I would not necessarily recommend this particular Liatris or blazing star. This is Liatris pycnostachya, the prairie blazing star. If you want a blazing star that really brings in the butterflies, you want the meadow blazing star, Liatris ligustylus. That is not here, so I can't show it to you. The difference, the prairie blazing star, notice how dense the flower plumes are along the stem. I mean, they're just packed together tight, and they're stuck right to the stem. On the meadow blazing star, ligustylus, the flower clusters are scattered about more along the stem, and each one is on a long stem itself. So they look totally different. But those are just loaded. In early September, when they're blooming, you might find 4 monarch butterflies on one plant, and they'll just be packed with them. So that's the blazing star. But if you can't get that one, I mean, this one sure looks pretty. So that's the meadow blazing star. We need to do this coneflower again. The gray-headed coneflower is another kind of one of those confusing yellow flowers that you'll find on the prairie. There's several different kinds of yellow flowers. You can tell them apart by the way their petals are kind of formed and the color of their cones, so to speak. These have kind of yellow or grayish green cones, as you can see right there. They turn a little bit brown when they're older. I call them Sleepy Susans, because those yellow petals kind of droop down, or Lazy Susans, another name for them right there. A very hardy plant and a good one to plant, say, in your native flower garden at home. We always recommend that people plant their yards and gardens to native flowers rather than those from some other place, because the pollinators oftentimes totally ignore, they can't utilize them. They don't know what they are. speaking of, we said like lazy Susan or sleepy Susan, here's the black-eyed Susan right next to it. Let's put one down. Let's see if we can get that down there. Get it untangled here, maybe, or not. Huh, wow. So there you can kind of see, and you can kind of see the black-eyed Susan has a very dark head, and the petals more stick straight out. So the black-eyed Susan and the gray-headed coneflower right there for a good comparison. Otherwise, they look fairly similar. The black-eyed Susan, the gray-headed coneflowers, very hardy, very adaptable. They'll grow just about anywhere. They self-sow easily. So once you kind of get them going in your flower garden at home, they'll probably be there till the end of time. So anyway, and then we've got, this is the other one over here that kind of looks like a black-eyed Susan too. This is the ox-eye sunflower, which notice it does not have a dark center. The center on the ox-eye sunflower is yellow. But again, just like the black-eyed Susan and the gray-headed coneflower, very hardy, very adaptable. Those are the three right there for yellow flowers. You can plant them all together, and the nice thing about those flowers too is they have a long blooming season. Some flowers on the prairie, this prairie blazing star here that we just talked about, they only bloom for about a week and they're done. These ox-eye sunflowers, the black-eyed Susan, they'll bloom for a month or more. So again, you get color all summer long on them right there. We'll wander down the way. We're a little early for goldenrods here, but this is the stiff goldenrod that we're looking at right here. It's gonna have, when the flowers bloom, they have a flat top. Kind of looks like it gave it a crew cut rather than the kind of the dangling plumes that kind of come down there on the stiff goldenrod that we'll see right there. So again, a lot of people don't like goldenrod flowers because they think they give them hay fever, but nothing could be further from the truth. That's caused by giant ragweed, which I don't see any out here to show you what that look like, but this is not a problem plant at all. And goldenrods are the #1 blooming plant for pollinators to use in the fall. So very beneficial, very beneficial. Don't kill your goldenrods, even though some can be kind of aggressive. Let's see, let's come over here. Unfortunately, I think I don't see any blooming, but we've got the seed pods. So this is Great St. John's wort. That had yellow flowers as well back in late June and early July. If we won't. If you pop them open, they're just full of really tiny, they almost look like, what would I think of? Something like mustard seed or something like that inside. Little brown seeds right there. I guess the claim to fame for St. John's wort is that you can buy extracts of that at the local health food store, and supposedly, and there's some research to back it up, if people have just a mild case of depression, it kind of helps bring them out of the blues a little bit. So Great St. John's wort. Here's some more. You can kind of see the basal leaves of compass plant. I think we talked about that plant earlier. But you can see, again, they almost kind of have a, desert-like look to them compared to some of the plants. And you can see here the compass plants blooming, again, very nice and tall on the prairie. In the midsummer, they're probably the tallest flower you'll see on the prairie. Later in the fall, in September, sawtooth sunflowers will even get bigger than they are. Look at that. Yeah, this is the meadow blazing star. I think we could, if we come right over here, we can probably walk right out there. So this is Laetris ligustylus, just starting to bloom. Notice again how the blossoms are scattered around the stem, and they're on their own little stems coming off rather than attached directly to the stem. if this was a good day for butterflies to be flying, if we stood here for probably 10 minutes, we'd have maybe a monarch coming. We're kind of a little bit before oh, there's a monarch right there. Wonder if it's gonna. We're probably a little too close, but it looks like it wanted to come in and get a little nectar from the blazing star right there. There's not a lot of monarchs around right now. Oh, if we can look back there, here's one of the nesting birds at the Decorah Prairie. That is a song sparrow. There it flies. So they've got a really nice, sweet song if you're walking down a country road. If you grew up in the country here in Iowa, they're kind of, you might say, and a common yellowthroat. Oh, little masked bandit right there. They have a yellowthroat. The male that we just saw had a black band through his face. So they're a warbler. You know, we talk about warblers, and most warblers live in the woods. The common yellowthroat lives out here on the prairies, where they'll kind of nest right down in some of the really thick, dense scrub, probably right around where those cup plants are over there. It's a plant we haven't talked about yet. We probably will, but those yellowthroats, when they sing, they go witchy, witchy, witch, if you hear their song. So again, a couple of the real, I guess, common birds that nest out here, and we saw them both. These are about done blooming now. You're probably familiar if you know garden wildflowers. There are a couple different kinds of purple cone flowers. The one is native to prairies in Iowa, and at least in northern Iowa. That is this one, the pale purple cone flower. Kind of like the gray-headed coneflower, those purple petals here droop down. They look kind of like a scorched sea urchin when you see the top of them, and they're very spiky. There is another purple coneflower that people plant that's called the eastern purple coneflower, and its petals are going to stick straight out rather than down. And if we walk along the prairie a little bit later, we may find the eastern purple coneflower. That's not native, at least to northern Iowa on the prairies. That's more of what I'd call a savanna plant from Missouri, maybe sneaking into southern Iowa. But they're both fine, and they do bring in the pollinators as well. But this is the pale purple coneflower right here. And of course, echinacea is the genus name for both of them. And just like we saw over there with the St. John's wort, if you go to the local health food store and you want something, a natural remedy for fighting the colds that come in the fall season, a lot of people swear by echinacea. However, they take it in a pill form or tea or whatever. So it does have medicinal value. One of my on the prairie is the lead plant that we're looking in here, mostly done blooming. Here's one that's still in bloom. You can kind of see the beautiful bluish, almost tending to purple color. These are a favorite for bumblebees and other pollinators when they're in full bloom. And when the bees are working over the flowers, that golden pollen just coats their legs and bodies. It's kind of cool to see. But they're going to seed now. This lead plant, this is got a very deep and kind of sturdy taproot, big taproot. And so the pioneers, they called this the pest of the plowman, because when they'd hit it, we're talking now back when they still had kind of an iron plow rather than the steel moldboard plow before John Deere invented that. And when they'd be pulling that plow with breaking plow like with the oxen or whatever, and they'd hit a stand of these lead plant, it'd stop them dead in their tracks. So rupture root, another name for the lead plant.
Larry, how about this tall right here?
Yeah, okay, excellent. Yeah, this tall grass right here, this is big blue stem. The kind of, you might say, the common name for big blue stem is turkeyfoot. So this is kind of highlighted against the sky. You can see the prongs sticking up, which kind of, you've seen a turkey track before. Here the seed heads are tracking up the sky. So big blue stem, this is the king of the prairie grasses. the most common prairie grass that was probably present in Iowa in prehistoric times. And the early settlers, they claimed the ground that had the biggest stands of big bluestem because that grew the best corn crops. So, and of course the reason that, you know, Iowa's 35 million acres of prairie has dwindled down to probably maybe 5,000 to 10,000 acres of native prairie left, and most of that is quite degraded. But the reason our prairie has disappeared is because, again, it's the most productive land in the world for growing food as well as prairie grasses. But big bluestem. Here's another neat plant right here, rattlesnake master. Bunch of little white globes right here, kind of spiny. Let's key in too on when we get a chance on the leaves, which when we look down at the leaves a little bit later on here are going to look a lot like a cactus when you see them. They've got little sharp spines on them, and so these are the leaves that we see on, and again they're very leathery, but you can kind of see the little spines. So these are again are well adapted for kind of withstanding drought conditions right here. But this is the rattlesnake master plant, which again, it doesn't have any benefit for curing a rattlesnake bite that I can ever look up. But again, if you read some of the account by the early ethnologists or people that studied, you know, the native peoples that lived around here, they use it as a kind of an aphrodisiac. So the original Viagra, I guess, maybe, right there. Rattlesnake master. And another prairie grass right here. This is side oats grama. Again, this one here, very easy to identify it. Look at the way that the seeds are just kind of lined up along the stem on their sides like that. Side oats grama. This is a plant that grows in really natively in really dry habitats where there's little competition. Out here on the Decorah Prairie, it would not survive more than a year or two where you've got all the bigger stuff. But in a planting like this, or if you're along an edge, then it will grow. But usually I find it on real dry sites where there's not a lot of other plants growing. The barer the ground, the better the side oats grama likes it. But a native flower, and this is one that if you were just planting a little prairie plant plot in your yard and you wanted a mix of grasses and flowers, you know, and you don't want the thing to look like a jungle, you do not want to plant big bluestem. Go with little bluestem, which I don't see. Go with the northern dropseed and go with side oats grama. This is the tallest side oats grama I've ever seen. Normally it's not growing anywhere near this tall. Knee high is out on a prairie would be just about as big as that grows. So again, just a neat little plant right there. Speaking of potential problem plants in a restored prairie, this is cup plant. So cup plants kind of looks, it's about the same size, an individual plant as we saw with the compass plant, but the leaves are totally different. Here they form, well, let's see, they form cups. And when it rains, the water collects in there. Sometimes you come out here, you'll see like a little gray tree frog sitting inside of there. Birds come and drink, you know, this is like their little bird bath where they can get a drink of water right there. The flowers look much like the flowers that we saw on the compass plant when you see them, like a sunflower. Of course, the stems here are smooth rather than rough and hairy like we saw on the compass plant. And this cup plant can grow 8 feet tall at least. The one problem, the cup plant is a neat plant, but it's very aggressive. And if you've got a restored prairie and you plant more than like one plant of this, in 10 years or so, you'll have a whole prairie full of cup plant and not much else. So I would plant it very sparingly, if at all. But again, in the proper place, it was probably a plant that when there was a lot of prairie that you could look at, would have grown in some of the wetter swales, especially where there was some tree cover along the creeks and places like that. And that's where you'll still find it growing in a lot of natural habitats now. Cup plant. Got kind of a square stem when you see it right there too, which is kind of cool. The cup plant. Oh, we've got another milkweed down here. Something's not doing too well on the one. I don't know what. This is the swamp milkweed, and this one has pink flowers. We had the butterfly milkweed with the orange flowers. If you remember the big round balls of common milkweed that you've seen around the 4th of July blooming, they have kind of a pale pink flowers. But these are kind of a pink as well, darker pink, rose colored in fact. And they're more flat topped than the round ball that you'll see on the common milkweed. The leaves look very thin, almost like we saw with the butterfly milkweed there. And in a kind of a native situation, this is a milkweed that grows, as they say, in swamps. Out at Cardinal Marsh, which is over in the western part of Winneshiek County, it grows right along the bank between the water and the dry land. So if you plant it in your yard, you want it in oh, there's one of those little skipper butterflies. And again, I can't tell which kind it is right now. I'm thinking possibly, again, the fiery skipper has been out and about here lately. But that's the little butterfly getting a drink of nectar right there off of the swamp. And this is, again, like any milkweed, you will find monarch caterpillars on these in the summertime. I don't see any on these here right now, but there could be. Now there is a red milkweed beetle. Yeah. So that's the red milkweed beetle right there, which eats the leaves of milkweed plants. So you can again find that guy on just about any of the milkweeds around here. And again, it's got kind of the same colors as a monarch butterfly, orange and black, or red and black, which are kind of warning colors. So a lot of our there's a great golden digger wasp. Look at that beautiful thing right there, orange and black. So that wasp right there digs a hole in the ground, maybe a tunnel about 5 or 6 inches deep. It will collect katydids, paralyzes them, carries them down the burrow, and then lays its egg on the katydid as a food source for its larvae, which are kind of like a caterpillar. But the great golden digger wasp, pretty cool. Pretty much harmful. Oh, here's a milkweed bug. We had the milkweed beetle. Oh, he disappeared, but it again had those same black and red kind of warning colors on it right there. We can probably just kind of wander down a little ways. I think down here, if I remember right, yeah, over here I can see some pods. So they kind of look like pea pods on this plant. We're coming right over here. This is white wild indigo. Here's our pods on the white wild indigo. So this is in the legume family, again, kind of related to peas, you might say. They had white, kind of pale white pea-like flowers earlier back in June. Now we've got the pods forming. These pods are kind of a pale green right now. By September, they will turn black. And the seeds, let's see if we can open one up. Seeds should be forming here right now. Just like a pea pod. There's the little developing seeds, as you can see. If you were out on, say, Hayden Prairie, probably not so much here because haven't had a lot of chance over the years for these relationships to build up. But there's weevils out on Hayden Prairie that eat every one of the seeds inside these white wild indigo pods. You almost never find one that, because I mean they're a great food source, nutrition right there. But later on in the fall, these seeds will loosen up in there, and they get hard as a rock. And if you break this off, you can use it just like a little rattle for a toy. So if you've got, you know, some kids that you got out on the prairie and you want to have them entertain themselves, you can have them make some music with the rattle pods of the white wild indigo.